There are many different forms and styles of design used in logo creation, but logos all have a general form and basic anatomy. This lesson will review the structure and anatomy of great logo designs. We'll also review the many styles, forms, and flavors they can come in. First of all, what is a logo? Can a symbol without text or a company name be considered a logo? Let's break all this down. A logo type is a written type or characters that make up a company or logo name. For instance, in this example, Racing Revolution will be the logo type. A logo mark is the symbol, icon, or graphic that's included in the logo, but is separate from the type or typography. A great logo design will be a logo mark that can exist outside of the logo type and still be recognized. The best example of this in action is Apple. They do not need to have a logo type or words next to their logo mark to let the consumer know it's an Apple product. They understand this simply by looking at the logo mark. A logo mark and a logo type put together create the full logo. Not all logos require a logo mark or symbol to be successful. Take, for instance, this logo. It only uses typography or text, but it remains effective and recognizable with no need for a separate graphic or symbol. Now, can a logo mark or symbol exist without the type or the company name, so the logo type? This is where it starts to get a little bit complicated. Yes and no. Our Apple example, the logo works without the use of typography, and you can see on their website the absence of the type or company name next to their main logo in the website header. This is because the brand is one of the most recognized brands in the world. A smaller brand, perhaps one you might have as a client someday, may not have the same brand recognition, so a logo with a logo mark or just a symbol only may not work to build that company's name recognition. A combination of a logo type and a logo mark inside one concise shape or symbol is called a badge or a seal logo. Sometimes they're referred to as emblem logos. These are special as they combine both type and symbols to create one flexible graphic. The great thing about seals and badges is they reduce the need for two separate objects, making them versatile and applying them to a wide variety of products and placements very easily. Emblems, seals, and badges are great for event-based brands and programs. They can exist in a central part of the design of the flyer or poster, for example, and they can explain both the event name and the company brand all in one simple graphic. Let's talk about spacing. Spacing is huge in logo design. A properly spaced logo can look professional and clean, but too much spacing can create a disconnect between the two elements. A typography-only or type-only logo can have problems with spacing as well. If the characters are too close together, it can seem crowded and overwhelming. If the gaps are too wide, there can be the same disconnect with the characters in the logo or company name. What is the proper spacing for logo design elements? There are several tools and methods you can use to find the proper spacing, including grids, to find the right spacing for your logo elements. Grids can be used to create the same space between characters, for example, making sure there is even spacing to create that clean professional look. Not all logos need a grid to be successful. Some logos, which are hand-drawn, illustrated, may be later vectorized to keep this hand-drawn feeling. Therefore, the spacing may not have to be perfectly even, as it starts to lose that organic, authentic feeling that way. The golden ratio is another method designers can use to find the right spacing for a logo. The golden ratio is based in nature, and more details about the golden ratio will follow that will include us building a golden ratio-based logo together a little bit later in the class. But it comprises of circles and rectangles that are all sized according to a ratio of 1 to 1.618. These circles and rectangles can then be arranged in a way to create spacing and shapes that apply the golden ratio to them, giving them a look and a feel that is based on the ratio that is pleasing to the eye and found in nature. And lastly, there's the designer's eye. Finding the right spacing does not have to adhere to a special formula or a grid. With practice, you'll learn what looks great and what distance is too far or too close. They call this optical adjustment. When you optically adjust a logo, you're using your eye to find the right placement, and not grids and not a formula. I found this very important when working with logo types or typography-only logos. This is because certain characters create wider gaps between them optically. If we were to put this T and this P together, it creates this default spacing between the characters. I think this is a nice spacing, not too wide, not too close, But what if we had a T and an A together, and we wanted to have the same spacing between each character of the word? We can do that here, but because the T naturally has bigger gaps to the left and right sides, because the heaviness is on the top of the T, using the same spacing is a little bit awkward. That is why manually adjusting character spacing may be needed to offset these visual gaps when that T is creating. The act of manually adjusting the spacing between type characters is called kerning, and we'll do plenty of that when we work on logo projects together. Now it's time for the balance of the logo, and finding the right balance in a logo design is critical. I find a lot of designers like to create large logo marks or symbols, but leaves this seemingly tiny logo type in its wake. Hard to see and hard to read. Company name recognition, as we reviewed earlier, is essential to a newer or budding brand. Being able to have the type be readable but also balanced with the symbol is good. Neither the symbol or the type should overwhelm or take over. There should be a balance in the logo, and a lot of times the grid can come in handy in finding the right balance between this, like in this example, where the size of the logo mark and logo type are figured out by making the symbol half of the width of the text, using the grid to figure out exactly what that is. There are different terms you may have heard related to different types of logo design. I'm going to go over a few so you can get a good visual description of a few of the main ones. Monogram logos, or you might have heard the term abbreviation logos, they consist of the initials of a company. For example, International Business Machines, or IBM as you know it. They use a monogram of the company for its main symbol or mark. Word marks. Another name is logotypes, as we discussed earlier. Word marks are basically logotypes and type-only logos that consist of the company's name only. Google and FedEx are great examples of this in action. Emblems, or other names, are seals and badges, and they consist of a combination of type and symbols into one shape. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but that shape can be endless. Abstract logo marks consist of logos that contain an abstract shape or symbol that can loosely be based on what the company does. Lululemon is a great example of this, as well as BP or British Petroleum with their soft flower-like abstract graphic. Mascot logos are another one, and they consist of a main mascot, and you might have seen this a lot in sports teams. MailChimp is a great example of a mascot being used in a logo. The last one we're talking about today is combination marks, which combine both the type and symbol together in one logo. So we had a chance to review basic logo anatomy, talk about spacing and balancing, and we reviewed several different categories of logos. Now let's take a look at some different styles of logos. Before we hopped into the next lesson, I wanted to mention that I also have a resource, a downloadable resource, that contains a cheat sheet of all the main logo types and styles that we went over in this lesson.